Some say that bigger nozzles are the way to go with current slicers due to faster printing speed and minimal quality loss. But instead of listening blindly, I did what I always do on this channel. I spent countless hours testing multiple nozzle sizes to find the most universal one for printing PLA. And the results? I don't really want to spoil it, but let's just say that you probably won't buy any other nozzle size again. So let's find out more. This video is sponsored by PCBWay. They offer a variety of professional services like PCB prototyping, CNC machining, or 3D printing, even from metal. They also have a PCBWay Plus community where you can find all sorts of electronic projects from enthusiasts around the world. And if you like what you see, you can quickly and easily order the PCB of a project. Therefore, if you're interested, check it out and also get $5 off for your first purchase via a link in the video description. So not that long ago, there was a significant shift in hobbyist 3D printing when Cura and later PrusaSlicer introduced a new slicing engine called Arachne. Its biggest benefit: faster, stronger and better looking prints due to variable width lines. The reason it is important for this test is because now we can print around twice the thinner lines than the main set width. So for example, with a 0.6mm nozzle and 0.4 line width, we can print around 0.2mm walls. Pretty cool, right? So because of that, I chose to test nozzles at multiple line widths. Maybe the 0.61 can print as detailed as 0.4, because no matter the nozzle size, the set line width will mostly dictate how thin you can print. However, setting it slightly higher can break the tiny details in the prints. So how does the slicer view at 0.4 line width translate to real prints? Well, I think it's no surprise to anyone that smaller the nozzle, the better the details in the print's firmware. But it's closer than I think it would be. Nonetheless, it is an obvious and very important first advantage in this comparison. And what about more realistic prints? First, the Kelly Dragon at 0.4mm line width. The most obvious thing that we see is more stringing with bigger nozzles. For these tests, I'm using Meta PLA that SUNLU sent for this video. As they say, it is more fluid than regular PLA, then yes, it can make more strings. But fluidity can also bring better layer adhesion strength. But I digress. So let's go back to the results. And rather than the stringing, the difference was so little that I couldn't even separate the prints by looking directly at them. Only when I looked at the seams, it was so obvious which one was which. The smaller the nozzle, the less noticeable it was. The second print was my designed test cube. It is more complex precision testing model. And not like previously, here we can see a difference. The prints with 0.4mm nozzle look sharper in the corners, has better bridges, and cleaner overhangs. So we have three more important advantages of the smaller nozzles. Then the next step, the 0.5mm line widths. Here we start seeing a very slight loss in the smaller definitions by the bigger nozzles. It is not that noticeable at first, but when looking directly I could pick the 0.4mm nozzle print quite consistently. Meanwhile on the Cube print nothing really changes from the previous comparison. The smaller the nozzle, the better it looked in every aspect. And finally, the 0.6 line width. I posted this image with the results on Twitter for you to look at and try to guess it. If you looked at this spot, it was pretty easy to tell. Because here we start seeing a more pronounced difference. With a 0.6 nozzle, definitions looks washed out. Meanwhile, with a 0.4 nozzle, they still look as sharp as at a 0.4 line width. Here I could very easily tell which one is which without any mistakes. And the cubes tell us the same story as from the beginning, nothing really new. So here are two more advantages on the list. It is kinda crazy how better 0.4mm nozzle is at everything. Or is it? This time I will continue only with 0.4 and 0.6 nozzles, as 0.5 was literally a middle ground between two others. With that said, here are the results of small horizontal details of the prints with 0.4 line width. Again, 0.4mm nozzle just destroys 0.61. It is nowhere even close. And if you go to quite an extreme 0.8 line width, they both look bad, but the smaller nozzle still has the edge here. But what about prints with a lot of details at that thick width? Here the difference in definitions is even more obvious. The 0.4mm nozzle again manages to completely blow out the 0.6 one. And please don't get me wrong, print still looks good with a bigger nozzle, but this difference is what defines great versus a good quality print. I also printed this Ninja Turtle bust at a 25% scale just to validate the results. And as you can see, the smaller nozzles still produce deeper definitions. However, on the Q-print with that thick line, we start seeing almost identical results, except there was one spot where overhangs look worse with a 0.4 nozzle. In theory, high-angle overhang should look worse on smaller nozzles with wide lines just because here we're squeezing down the filament to get required width, and it should drip and sag more, so yes, at wider lines and higher angles, 0.6 nozzle will have that advantage. And now we reach the final stage of testing. Till this point the lay height on all the prints was 0.2mm, so definitely the bigger nozzle will print better at higher layers and wider lines, right? Well, the results here are more similar than I would imagine. We could see the previously mentioned line squeezing and dripping on 0.4 nozzle prints, but rather than that, prints were basically identical. However, again, there's a different story with the horizontal details. Prints with 0.6 nozzle looks like a complete mess, but 0.4 still manages to look pretty decent, only the smallest letters are less readable. And for the final comparison, a practical print of a box for AA batteries. The results here are basically identical, both of them have small imperfections but in different spots. And if you wonder what about the dimensional accuracy, I'm glad to say that it's still exactly the same in X, Y, and Z directions. But I have to note one very important thing when printing at higher layers. You see, every Hotend has its limit how much cubic millimeters of plastic it can melt and extrude per second. It is called the maximum volumetric flow. So for example, the listed volumetric flow for a 3D V6 Hotend is 10 cubic millimeters per second, and if we would print at these presented settings, the volumetric flow would be 23 cubic millimeters per second, which is more than 2 times above the specification. By the way, if you are not a fan of the math, you can also easily see those numbers in your slicer. So then the actual maximum speed would be only 39 mm per second. I don't want to go more into details about this, but the point I'm trying to make is that most printers on the market can run into limitation of a stock Hotend even with a 0.4 mm nozzle, not to talk about significantly higher layers with bigger nozzles. And as you saw from the testing results, the 0.4 mm nozzle completely destroyed bigger nozzles almost in every aspect. Not only that, but by using a smaller nozzle and squeezing the filament, the lay adhesion can be as good as with bigger nozzles, as Stefan from CNC Kitchen showed in his detailed testing video. But just keep in mind that nozzles must have that wider surface of the tip to squeeze the filament properly. So yeah, the 0.4 mm nozzle is still the best nozzle size for printing PLA. Or is it? Because now I want to test the 0.3 mm one with these amazing findings. What are your thoughts about it? Feel free to leave a comment. My passion for testing and finding definitive answers for 3D printing perfection is only beginning here. I hope you like watching these videos as I love making them. And if you like them so much, maybe consider contributing to my work by becoming a patron. Thanks for all the support. That's all from me, and we'll see you next time.